It's a Friday edition of the Vegas Take, coming our way live from 101.5 FM, 720 AM K-Dawn. Chris Wynn in for Bryan Shapiro. He had a festive evening last night, JD. JD Sharp live in studio also. Johnny handling his business behind the scenes. But got a chance to go out and see Marilyn Manson last night. I'm curious how that all went down. Marilyn Manson was a big name back in the probably late 90s.
Oh, he's still a big name.
And you think so?
Yeah.
Marilyn Manson?
Yeah.
Kind of faded away.
No, he's the goth.
I mean, look,
occult Halloween.
He's a strange bird, isn't he?
You know,
I mean, he's not necessarily my cup of tea. He's not. I'm not a Marilyn Manson type of guy.
Metal, yeah, but everybody knows who Marilyn Manson is. He's branded.
Well, I know who he is. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I mean,
do you think he's still like a major? You think he's a major draw
in his genre? Absolutely. Yeah, in his specific genre, I believe he is.
Bryan Shapiro got a chance to head out there last night. He'll be back. Bryan will be back on Monday, as after a couple of days of a lot of activity in the world of sports. We got a lot of NFL action. The Raiders are finally back in Oakland for the first time in about, I believe it's like 6 or 7 weeks. They'll take on the Detroit Lions up there in the Bay Area. You've got all kinds of NBA, NHL action. Vegas Golden Knights end up playing themselves into a loss last night. They're up 4-2 late in that game and end up losing 5-4 in that matchup. And, of course, it's a big fight weekend here in Vegas. You got not the UFC 244 is not here in Vegas.
No, it's in New York.
But you got Nate Diaz is headlining that card. Nate, of course, a character, a guy who's one of the he's the tip of the spear in the UFC world. He generates a lot of interest. Let's put it that way when he's on the fight card. And of course, when it comes to boxing, huge matchup coming up this weekend here in Vegas. You got Canelo Alvarez taking on Sergey Kovalev. A guy who's a 3-time light heavyweight champion, world title holder. So intriguing matchup there. And joining us now on the phone lines, he is wired in also when it comes to all things sports. He's the sports director at NBC Channel 3 here in Las Vegas. Friend of the show, does a great job. Bryan Salmond joining us here on the Vegas Tape. Bryan, we appreciate the time. How are you?
My guy Chris Wynn got me wired in.
Yes, sir,
okay.
baby. You
right.
have your finger on the pulse of all things sports in Vegas, my friend. And so that's why we need to get some of your input.
You should call me the doctor then. I think someone else has got that name. But
I think there's a couple radio personalities around the country that already had that lined up as far as a nickname.
Or there's definitely at least one in Vegas.
There is. That's true.
All right, well, the physician. Call me the physician.
Okay. All right.
We got all kinds of nicknames for you, B-Sal. Okay, we can do it up for you.
See, Win, my
Yes,
guy.
sir.
What's up, guys?
How you doing?
We're doing good, man. We got, of course, a busy weekend coming up, and it's highlighted by a major matchup in the world of boxing, of course, right, Bryan? With Canelo Alvarez, and look, everybody was thinking, the next big fight would be really cool, right? To have Canelo take on Triple G for a third time after 2 highly entertaining matchups, but apparently Triple G had other ideas, right? And decides, you know what? I'm not going to just move up 1 weight class. I'm going to move up 2 weight classes and take on a guy who's much bigger and who is a 3-time light heavyweight champion. And look, Canelo, he's already got titles in junior middleweight, super middleweight. And so now he's going after Canelo's belt as well, too. And or he's going after Canelo, a guy who's, the biggest name in the division, let's be quite honest. And I got to believe you think this is a very intriguing matchup, right,
I would
B-Sal?
say he's the biggest name in boxing right now.
Oh, no
Canelo
question
Alvarez
about it.
is,
No question about it. But he's taking on, Kovalev, who in that division is clearly, is far and above the biggest star in the division. So Bryan, I got to believe that this is, despite the fact that, it's not Canelo and Triple G, but it's still a heck of an intriguing matchup.
Man, I'm pumped about this fight. I'm really pumped about this fight because, Kovalev is a guy that he was the crusher. He was the boogeyman, beat Bernard Hopkins. A lot of people thought that he beat Andre Ward in that first fight. I think the decision was okay for me in the first fight, but the second fight, clearly he got beat. But still, Kovalev is like my size as far as, just a really intimidating big dude if he's my size, clearly. But no, he's way bigger than Canelo. And I think that Canelo possibly could have bitten off more than he could chew. But, man, you got to love the stones on that guy, man, to think, forget 1 weight class. I'm jumping up 2 weight classes, 15 pounds from 160 to 175 to challenge a guy who's not a bum. He's challenging a guy who's the champion. He's really challenging a champion and a named champion at that. I can't wait to watch this fight. It's really a fight made for people who love boxing because the average person doesn't necessarily know this fight and it probably isn't all that pumped about it. But anyone who knows boxing is absolutely excited about this thing. I can't wait to go, man.
Yeah, a couple aspects that are very interesting between these two is you got Alvarez, who's a guy who's not afraid to go to the body, right? That's really one of his more powerful and one of his best aspects of his game is his body attack. And then you got Kovalev, of course, who's a jab master, right? He's a guy who utilizes the jab so well, and that's going to be an interesting contrast between these two guys once they get between the squared circle on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's always something that, it's the chess match of boxing, man. Like, who can impose whom's will on the other dude, man? Like Kovalev, like you said, he's got the reach advantage. He's a very good person at using the jab, which is the most important punch in boxing. But he is susceptible to the body. I mean, if anything that the Andre Ward fight showed us is that Kovalev is not a guy who likes getting touched in the body, which no one does, but he actually is a way that you can beat him by touching him to the body. And as you said, Canelo, man, he's a vicious body puncher, man. He goes to the body strong. He's got a good, powerful punch, but he's going to have to get through the crusher's jab in order to get to his body. So can he actually do that? I mean, he's a really good boxer. He's younger, obviously. He's faster. I think he's a better boxer than Kovalev, but I mean, will he be able to do that in order to get to his body and get off some of those punches? That's probably one of the holes in Kovalev's game is the fact that he's not a very good inside fighter. I mean, we saw Andre Ward get in the inside and just kind of beat him up, push him around, use his strength. It's going to be really interesting to see if Canelo can get inside the body. But one thing is for sure, I mean, it's sad to say because we live in Vegas, but Kovalev's not going to win a decision against Canelo. So, I mean, he's got to, you know what I mean? He's going to have to convincingly beat him.
He's going to definitely have to knock him out most likely, especially now that the rounds, it's minus 160 over 11 and a half rounds. So what's that tell you, C-Win?
It tells me that it could be going the distance, my friend.
They're likely expecting this fight to go the distance. So Canelo Alvarez is accused of tainted meat roughly a year and a half ago. Now suddenly he moves up 2 divisions, puts on 15 pounds. If he just destroys Kovalev, who was clearly larger than he is just by frame alone, but say he knocks him out in the 6th, do you think those rumors start popping up again, Bryan?
You know what? I honestly don't necessarily think that the rumors will pop up again just because, I mean, Canelo's a guy who usually walked around heavier than he was at that weight. Like, he kind of, I don't say he starved himself, but, I mean, it was tough for him to make the weight, even though he's doesn't have as big of a frame as Kovalev. I think that folks that are kind of, I don't want to say cynics of boxing or people that like the ugly side of combat sports may bring up the fact that they think he might have had some tainted meat, which I don't think anyone bought that excuse anyway. But I mean, if like you say it, Chris Wynn says it, like folks that kind of have a voice. If I get on the air and say it, then maybe some people start thinking like, you know what? I wonder if he did, but. It's highly possible. I mean, you're not pulling anything out of thin air. You're not ridiculous for saying what you just said. So it is possible that if he beats him down, that you're like, well, he did jump up 2 weight classes.
Sports director Bryan Salmond joining us here live on the Vegas Take. He is with Channel 3 NBC here in Las Vegas. We're breaking down the Canelo and Canelo Alvarez, Sergey Kovalev fight going down. So, obviously, Bryan, in a perfect world, as far as the boxing world is concerned, and whether you're Triple G or whether you're Alvarez's promoter, Golden Boy, and Oscar De La Hoya, and whether you're the DAZN, the broadcasting network that has both fighters under like 9-figure deals. I think there's a few people out there that would prefer that Canelo be the guy that comes out on top in this fight tomorrow night.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, the boxing world is like, yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, just like Dana White with a fight that he has in the UFC, he would prefer the bigger name fighter win just because it's better as a promoter and everything else. And obviously Canelo is the face of boxing and, the biggest name in boxing, even though he doesn't speak English and doesn't really care to speak English, that, the powers that be would want him to win. Just like they wanted Anthony Joshua to win when he fought against Ruiz. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But hey, say Kovalev wins. What that does do is it makes up one. You can be like, well, you know what? He did jump up 2 weight classes, so that's the reason he lost, because the size was just too much
it's
for
an
him.
excuse.
So, you know what I mean? You got to build an excuse if he does lose.
Right. So who do you think wins the fight?
Ooh. Man, I kind of said the same thing on the air when Jim Snyder, our main anchor, asked me who I thought was going to win this fight. For real, I kind of feel like Kovalev could win this fight. But I'll put this on it. Depending on who shows up, if the Kovalev that fought against Andre Ward in the first fight shows up, then I think he beats Canelo Alvarez. You know, or at least gets a draw to the point to where folks are like, okay, Canelo bit off more than he can chew, and he goes back down. It's like, yeah, I got out of there alive without taking an L. But if the Kovalev that showed up in his last 2 fights shows up in this fight, I think that it's very highly possible that Canelo can win this fight. He can get inside. He can actually land some of these punches that people think he can't to the body. So is that really just hanging out on the fence like a bird?
Yeah, but it's fair. I can appreciate the political correctness and the urge not to commit to something. So one more boxing question for you here.
No, it's not that I don't want to commit. I truly feel that way. Like, I seriously do.
So one more boxing question for you here. Sean Porter and Terrence Crawford has basically gone out and said that if Sean Porter agrees to a fight, he will fight Terrence Crawford or he will fight Sean Porter. And Terrence Crawford is I would say he's probably the top pound for pound boxer in the world, at least in my book. I don't know if that's the case with BoxRec.com or Ring Magazine or whatever. But do you think that Sean Porter would have any shot of beating Terrence Crawford if that fight were to take place?
You said any shot?
Yes.
Of course, I think absolutely. I mean, you saw the fight with him and Errol Spence. I mean, he did what nobody thought he had any chance of doing.
It was a great fight.
Errol Spence. Man, that was a great fight. And you already know Sean Porter. He's a friend of your show, a friend of my show, like the greatest dude ever. And just being a great dude doesn't mean that you have to say that he has a chance, but he's proved it. I mean, he's out of all the top fighters in the welterweight division, Sean Porter has the best resume out of all of them by far. He's fought the best fighters, and he hasn't gotten washed by anybody. Nobody just destroyed him or they can walk through him. He's strong as hell. He absolutely has a chance against Terrence Crawford. That doesn't mean that I think he would go in there and beat him, but I think he absolutely has a chance. That's a lot. He's a live fight against anybody. He has a chance to beat anybody. But I thought that Terrence Crawford and Sean Porter were really good friends.
They are. They're extremely clse.
Yeah, so I didn't think that fight would ever happen. I remember him saying that, I would never fight Terrence Crawford. So even though they may put, they're professionals and put friendship aside and blah, blah, blah. But so I hadn't heard that. I don't want to personally, I don't really want to see friends fight. Boxing is completely different. Like, guys, it's just a sport. It's like playing one-on-one basketball against somebody, even though you're punching, but it's still just a sport. And that's how boxers look at it, and I get that. But, wow, if they actually did fight, that'd be something, that'd be special.
Yeah, it'd be a big fight. And Terrence can inflict some damage. And, talking about damage, you've had 4 fighters actually die based on, in-the-ring injuries in the last 3 to 4 months. I'm starting to think that maybe boxing has too many rounds. Do you agree with that?
Nah, not necessarily, man. I mean, what they do have is sometimes referees are letting guys get hit too much.
Right, I agree.
I mean? Yeah, I mean, like I know, man, like boxing, there's a danger element to it, just like NASCAR racing. I mean, and fighters know what they're getting into when they start fighting. So as long as the referee does what they're truly meant to do is save a fighter from themselves, because some guys can be just too tough. That element's never going to go away. And they fight 12 rounds, which, back in the day, like, I'm an old man, like Chris Wynn, like, they used to go 15 rounds. And even way before that, they'd fight until, the sun went down and came back up. You know what I mean?
Old Man River. Yes, we are. Bryan Salmond joining us here live here on the Vegas Take on a Friday. We're breaking down, of course, the Kovalev-Alvarez fight that goes down tomorrow night. But I'm going to switch gears on you, Bryan, here a little bit and talk some VGK. Last night had a late lead there. Third period. They're up 4-2 in that one. And look, we're 15 games into the season. There's been some chatter on social media and on Twitter, some concern about, where this team is at as far as, expectations and are they where they need to be. And, of course, personnel's kind of been going in and out with some injuries and guys coming back. But they ended up losing that game last night, 5-4 to the Montreal Canadiens, a team that, most hockey experts and people that, follow the game would understand that the Canadiens aren't a team that is as good as the Vegas Golden Knights, yet they end up coming out on top on that one. Yeah, any reason you think to push the panic button or to be concerned, I guess, about this Vegas Golden Knights team, considering, look, we're 15 games into the season?
Yeah. No, man. Like, that's only people that would panic and be like, oh, my goodness, if you believe that the Golden Knights are a team that, like, a lot of people like Barry Melrose believes that he picked them to win the Stanley Cup.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, no, really, really pushed the panic button after they played exactly one game with their entire team, one whole game with their entire team. You know what I mean? Like, come on now. Although last night's loss was terrible.
Yes.
The fact that they're up, 4-2 in the third period and they end up losing, they still get a point, which, like I know, 1 point is still better than 0 points in hockey. Getting any kind of a point is a big deal at all times. But it was a bad loss. I think you leave it at that. And if they continue to do something like they clearly pulled their foot off the gas pedal, like, we got this thing. And Montreal's like, please, guys, we still play. Like, I don't know what the heck you guys are doing. We still playing hockey out here. So,
and I think a big thing, right, is it's about getting guys going that were key, the last couple of years, whether it's William Karlsson, right? Whether it's keeping expounding on getting better if you're Cody Glass, right? A young guy like that continuing to get confidence and continue to understand that, hey, I can be a great player in this league and continue to score goals for them. That can be big. I think that's massive. And then you combine that with the fact that, you want to manage Marc-Andre Fleury, right? You want to make sure he's fresh, make sure that, he's in the right spot. I think, managing him is going to be a big key, right, for the Golden Knights moving forward as far as their success.
Man, is it key? Yeah. I mean, they said last night, Marc-Andre Fleury, has the most starts of any goalie in the league. Just like last year, for the most part of the season, he was had the most time on the ice of any goalie. He had the most wins of any goalie in hockey at the beginning of last game, which last year, for a great part of the season, he had the most wins because he started every game dang near and played every game and everything else. Yeah, they got to get Subban in there. I'm almost assuming that Subban may play on Saturday, tomorrow. I guess today is Friday, right? So
Yep.
I'm assuming that Subban may play tomorrow because you're right, man. They got to get Fleury some rest. But with all that being said, the goals that went in, especially the two of the goals in the third period, had nothing to do with Fleury.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's getting scored on by his own teammates. So it wasn't his fault. But Fleury, man, he's a machine, but he needs rest.
Bryan Salmond joining us, sports director from Channel 3 NBC here in Las Vegas. We're talking all things VGK. Also, of course, the big fight coming up tomorrow night. Bryan, get a chance to get out with the family yesterday for some Halloween action, maybe a little trick-or-treating with the kids?
I absolutely did, yeah.
Yes.
My little girl here right now, she wants some candy that she's not getting. But, yeah, I went out last night. The little girl's dressed up, man. Jason, man, how about you? Did you do any trick-or-treating?
I did some trick or treating with my 2-year-old daughter. She fell out of her shoes about 6 times from all the walking, but that's fine. Her outfit. She was a tiger. She was a little tiger, so that was cool. But no, I talked about this earlier, but it's weird that the trick-or-treating environment in Vegas is so different from what I've experienced before. I mean, you had 60 to 70 kids. I mean, not just like 4 years old. I mean, up to 15, 16 years old, and the house is all around my house. A lot of the parents, there'd be a table for candy and there'd be a table for wine. And they would offer the parents wine, which I've never experienced that before. But
wow!
Yeah, it was really crazy.
Well, I mean, not all of us has the opportunity to live in that kind of an environment, Jason. But
no, it is. I mean, it has nothing to do with the affluence of my neighborhood. But it was also cool to see Vegas is very, very diversified in culture. And it was also to see the different cultures, when you walk into, one thing you do with trick-or-treating is you can see inside your neighbor's house, and you have no idea, what their house looks like. So it was kind of cool to see the diversification of that as well. But I definitely enjoyed my Halloween, to say the least. But I did have the Knights last night in a moneyline parlay, a three-team parlay. And honestly, Brian, I'm hearing what you're saying, but I mean, this team is 8-7. They've lost to some pretty questionable teams, in my opinion. They've barely beaten. Wow. I mean, they barely beat Ottawa. That was a question. I mean, I don't know. I think this team. I'm not sure. I'm not saying the magic is gone, but I think there's reason to be at least a little concerned, or I would say moderately concerned, considering how successful the team was in the past and the big trades that were made in the acquisitions in the offseason. And I do believe that Fleury is starting to become more vulnerable, and as he should be. He's 36 years old.
Bryan Salmond joining it. Brian, hey, we appreciate your time and getting a chance to join us, my friend. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Cool. That sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on, C-Win and Jason, man. I'm glad you guys had a chance to experience some good Halloween last night, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Yeah. Take care, all right, there?
All right, guys.
All right, see you later, Brian.
Yeah.
Right.
Bryan Salmond, you can find him on Channel 3 weekdays. He's the sports director there, does a great job covering all things Vegas sports. But it was tremendous getting a chance to fill in for Brian, JD, hang out with you on a Friday. Thanks to Johnny for all his help as well, too. Thanks to our guest, Ken Thompson from SportsX Radio. Catch him tonight from 8 to 10. Also, Bryan Salmond, of course, Frank Rudy Cooper, the criminal law professor from UNLV, and also Mr. X as well, joined us live from Los Angeles. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll be back again on Monday. Brian Shapiro, JD Sharp. It is the Vegas Take. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll talk to you again on Monday.